Breaking tonight, new evidence that what started with a campus protest in Missouri may be spreading to more colleges and universities as small groups of students use complaints about race and diversity in a big play to rewrite the rules for everyone.
I want to take you back to 2015. Fox News host Megyn Kelly.
Santa just is white. You know, I mean, Jesus was a white man, too.
What is racist? Because truly, you do get in trouble if you are a white person who puts on blackface for Halloween, or a black person who puts on whiteface for Halloween. Like, back when I was a kid, that was okay as long as you were dressing up as like a character.
Who believed it was okay to dress in blackface.
Also a culture that develops where it's them versus us, it's anti-cop, it's sort of, you know, people have called it the thug mentality, and that's a controversial term, but, you know, that it's cool to sort of hate the cops and hang out and, you know, be somebody who doesn't necessarily prize being there for your family and so on. And how do you reverse that?
Says crap like this in a town hall.
And then play a sports game. And not to shove politics or divisive cultural issues down the throats of the viewers who are looking for a getaway.
And hates politics and sports unless it's from those she agrees with.
It started with a remarkable series of events at the University of Missouri. In a period of roughly 72 hours, a small group of angry black students managed to force the resignation of the two highest-ranking officials at that school, complaining they did not show enough concern about racial issues at the school, including the self-defense shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson last winter.
Hated the protest that took place at the time.
There is growing outrage tonight after an unarmed African-American teenager was shot and killed by police in the St. Louis suburb of Ferguson, Missouri.
Originating in the state of Missouri when Officer Darren Wilson took the life of Michael Brown. He was just 18 years old. Kelly, to a national audience, would say this.
Our blood is being spilled in the streets, the blood of Alton Sterling, the blood of Philandro Castile. Let's take us back to Mike Brown, Darius
Michael
Robinson.
Brown was the aggressor on the police officer.
No, he was not. That was your version.
The discourse would continue. In sports, several St. Louis Rams players demonstrated when introduced with the symbolic hands up, don't shoot pose, which many conservatives in return despised, like former Chicago Bears player and coach Mike Ditka. Quote, "It's a shame this thing has come to this. The shame of it is I'm not sure they care about Michael Brown or anything else. This was a reason to protest and to go out and loot. I'm embarrassed for the players more than anything." Then Sacramento Kings guard Ben McLemore wrote R.I.P. Michael Brown on his shoes. Allen Iverson would post a picture of himself in a shirt that read the slayin's name. "Gone but not forgotten," he wrote on Instagram. The message made its way to Istanbul, Turkey. When Besiktas took on Arsenal in the Champions League, the power of sports was prevalent. Yet one protest that deserves its flowers was from a college student named Aryiana Smith, pictured here. Prior to demonstrating, this happened.
They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against officers. And they turned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Why not?
Officer Wilson would not be indicted by a grand jury. The prosecutor was Robert McCullough. His father was a former police officer who was killed in the line of duty in a shootout with a black suspect. He admittedly botched the case. Thus, Aryiana Smith would protest. Smith would walk with her hands up, kneeling on the court. Then she would lay on the ground, which Anscape notes totaled 4.5 minutes, symbolic of the 4.5 hours Brown's body lay in the street after he was killed. She felt compelled to act after seeing the images flooding her Twitter timeline. Photos, videos, the shocking images of protesters being tear gassed and arrested. The game she was scheduled to play in was a mere 20 minutes from Ferguson, Missouri. You can actually see members of the Knox basketball staff walk over to Smith and try and get her off the floor. She stayed for the entirety of the 4.5 minutes. When she did rise, she went straight to the locker room. She'd tell the nation's Dave Zirin being on the ground, it was symbolic. It was a symbolic death. And I think the reactions to that demonstration were very telling. There were plenty of students on campus who despised her. You can see the word used on your screens. Public opinion for an abolitionist school was mixed. Indeed it was. She would be suspended from the team for her stance. Aryiana would reflect, "I could not go into the gymnasium and pretend that everything was okay. I could not in good conscience play that game. I could not go to the city of St. Louis and not acknowledge the sacrifice the protesters were making with their bodies. People are being gassed." To me, that demonstration was absolutely respectful. After leaving the AD's office, learning of her suspension, head coach Emily Klein threatened to call security on Smith if she did not leave Knox's facility. She would have Aryiana escorted out of the building in front of her teammates, all because she silently protested. Smith claims it came from Klein with approval from the athletic director and this woman, Knox president Teresa Amat, who retired in 2020. Once it reached the press, Knox had a far different tune. They would lift Aryiana's suspension almost immediately. The initial ruling was for 1 game. Team member Sherette Fisher says the decision was unanimous. "We as a team said that the protest that Aryiana did was very brave and noble. A lot of us admire the fact she did it, and the suspension should be uplifted," Fisher said. There are so many ways to view this. The political nature of sports, how sports is a reflection of the times of society, etc. One that sticks with me is the fallout, because it is reminiscent of other protests we have seen in sports. What happens with the athlete, why the athlete protests, and then the punishment. It is rinse, wash, repeat. They say history repeats itself. On this subject, it certainly does. Meanwhile, she was 19 years old. Her stance was courageous, to say the least. But the deciding factor, it appears, was media pressure. National media pressure at the time. That, combined with the unbinding love and support of her teammates. Sadly, that is something former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick, former NBA point guard Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf, and former shooting guard Craig Hodges of the Chicago Bulls cannot say.